The retired firefighter stood before Judge Caprio knowing he could face 5 years in prison. His parole violation was undeniable. His decision had been simple: follow the rules, or save a burning child. David Romero, 52 years old, a firefighter for 28 years, looked Judge Caprio straight in the eyes. No excuses. No begging. No apologies. Just the calm certainty of a man who would make the same choice again without hesitation. If you believe saving a child's life matters more than paperwork and technicalities, subscribe now. This channel stands for heroes like David. Stories like this deserve to be heard. The prosecutor read the charges: parole violation, case number 2024-4927. David Romero, released on parole 3 years ago after a conviction for driving under the influence. Terms of parole remain within Rhode Island state boundaries. Violation occurred June 23. Defendant traveled to Hartford, Connecticut, 47 miles across state lines. The courtroom was packed. Standing room only. 6-year-old Marcus Williams sat in the front row, holding a drawing tightly in his hands. His parents clutched him close, both of them already crying before the hearing even began. Judge Caprio looked down at the file, then back at David. Mr. Romero, do you understand how serious a parole violation is? Yes, Your Honor. David's voice was steady, the voice of someone who had run into burning buildings for nearly 3 decades. I understand completely. You could face 5 years in prison, the judge said. Maximum sentence for parole violation. He paused. Do you have legal representation? No, sir. Can't afford a lawyer. Don't need one. I violated parole. That's the truth. I'm not here to deny it. You could feel the confusion spreading across the courtroom. Defendants don't usually admit guilt so quickly. They don't usually stand there calm and certain while staring at 5 years behind bars, but what nobody in that courtroom knew yet was what had happened on Maple Street in Hartford, what David Romero had heard. What he had seen. And what decision he made in 3 seconds that would change everything. The prosecutor stepped forward. Your Honor, the defendant's parole terms were crystal clear. No travel outside Rhode Island without explicit permission from his parole officer. Mr. Romero did not request permission. Did not notify anyone. He simply left the state. This is a flagrant violation and deserves the maximum penalty. I did leave the state, David interrupted. May I explain why? Judge Caprio nodded. Go ahead. I was visiting my daughter. She lives in Hartford. About a 45-minute drive from Providence. She's pregnant with my first grandchild. Due in 2 months. His voice softened. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. My daughter is all I have left. I try to see her every few weeks. Just for a day. Just to make sure she's okay. The prosecutor made a note. Your Honor, emotional circumstances aside, the defendant knew the rules. I'm not finished, David said, and his voice changed. It carried the authority of a man who had commanded fire scenes, a man who had made life and death calls in seconds. I was leaving my daughter's apartment building. 3:17 p.m. And I heard screaming. A child screaming. That sound of pure terror, the kind you never forget once you've heard it. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus Williams squeezed his mother's hand even tighter. I looked up. 3rd floor. Apartment 3B. Smoke pouring out of the windows. Black smoke. Heavy smoke. The kind that tells you the fire's been burning for a while. David's fists clenched as he spoke, and I could hear him. A little boy screaming for help. Screaming for his mommy. Marcus's mother, Angela Williams, began sobbing. Her husband Robert wrapped his arms around her, holding her up. I'm a firefighter, Your Honor, David continued. Was a firefighter. 28 years with the Providence Fire Department. Retired 2 years ago. He swallowed hard, but firefighter isn't just a job. It's who you are. It's what you are forever. He took a slow breath. When you hear a child trapped in a burning building, you don't think about parole. You don't think about rules. You think about one thing. He looked straight at the judge. Get that child out. Listen carefully to what happened next, because what David Romero did in the next 4 minutes would save a life, and possibly destroy his freedom. The front door was locked. The superintendent wasn't there. There was no time to wait. I kicked it in. David's voice became almost mechanical now, like a firefighter reciting procedure. Smoke was thick. Visibility almost zero. Heat intense. I stayed low, followed the screaming, and found the boy in his bedroom. The door was closed. That saved him. It kept most of the smoke out. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Where were his parents? At work. Both of them. The after-school program was supposed to pick Marcus up. They ran late. An electrical fire started in the kitchen. Faulty wiring. Marcus was alone. David looked at the little boy. He was hiding under his bed. Smart kid. He knew to stay low. But he was trapped. The windows had security bars. The only door led into an apartment full of fire. Judge Caprio's voice dropped. What did you do? I picked him up, David said. Covered him with my jacket. and went back through the apartment. His eyes narrowed as the memory hit him again. The fire had spread. The living room was fully involved. Flames everywhere. Part of the ceiling collapsed, hit my shoulder, burned through my shirt. He touched his left shoulder without even realizing it. I got Marcus outside. Handed him to a neighbor. And then I collapsed. Angela Williams suddenly stood up. Your Honor, may I speak, please? Judge Caprio nodded. Angela walked forward, holding Marcus's hand, tears streaming down her face. That man saved my baby. My baby. She struggled to breathe through her crying. We were at work. Marcus was supposed to be picked up at 3:15. The program van broke down. They called us at 3:30 and said they'd be late. We weren't worried. Marcus is responsible. He has his key. He knows to stay inside. Her voice cracked completely, but by 3:40, the building was on fire. By 3:50, fire trucks were there, Robert Williams added, stepping beside her. They told us Marcus was inside. They were trying to reach him, but the fire was too intense. His voice shook with emotion. They said they weren't sure they could get to him in time. Smoke was too thick. Heat was too high. They were preparing for the worst. You could feel the weight of those words of the nightmare every parent fears. Then Robert continued, and then someone yelled that a man had gone in. A civilian. They thought he was crazy. Thought he'd die too. Angela wiped her face, but he came out carrying Marcus. Covered in soot. Burned. Bleeding. And he handed us our son alive. You would have felt it in your chest, the miracle of a child breathing when everyone thought he was gone. We asked his name, Angela continued. He said David. And then he passed out. Smoke inhalation. Second-degree burns. A broken collarbone from the ceiling collapse. They took him to the hospital, Robert said. We followed. We stayed with him. Angela looked directly at David. When he woke up, we asked him why. Why would you risk your life for a child you don't even know? Her voice trembled. He said, because I'm a firefighter. That's what we do. Marcus suddenly pulled his hand free. He walked up to David and held out his drawing. A stick figure man carrying a smaller stick figure. Flames all around them, and written in crayon were the words, "Thank you, Mr. David. You saved me. I love you." David took the drawing. His hands shook for the first time, his calm exterior cracked. "Thank you, Marcus," David whispered. "You were very brave." But nobody was prepared for what the prosecutor said next. Your Honor, while Mr. Romero's actions were heroic, they do not change the fundamental fact. He violated parole. He crossed state lines without permission. That is explicitly forbidden. He paused. If we allow emotional circumstances to override legal requirements, we undermine the entire parole system. The courtroom exploded, angry voices. People standing up. Shouting, he saved a child. This is insane. What's wrong with you? Judge Caprio slammed his hand down for order. Silence. Everyone sit down. Now. He waited until the chaos settled, until the room finally quieted, then he turned back to the prosecutor. Continue. Thank you, Your Honor, the prosecutor said. The law is clear. Parole terms exist for a reason. Mr. Romero was convicted of driving under the influence 3 years ago. Blood alcohol level, 0.17, more than twice the legal limit. He looked toward David. He endangered lives with that decision. His parole conditions restrict his movement to ensure compliance with court supervision and to maintain accountability. I was drunk, David's voice cut through the room. You're absolutely right. He stood there, shoulders squared, and for the first time his voice carried pain. 3 years ago, I got drunk. First time in my life. My wife had just died. 6 months of watching cancer destroy her. 6 months of hospitals, chemo, and hope dying a little more every single day. His throat tightened. She passed on a Tuesday. And by Saturday, I couldn't handle being alone in our house. I couldn't handle her empty chair. Her empty side of the bed. Her clothes still hanging in the closet. His voice cracked. I drank half a bottle of whiskey and tried to drive to my daughter's house. I made it 3 blocks before I hit a parked car. Nobody was hurt, just property damage. But I could have killed someone. He looked directly at Judge Caprio, and I know that. I live with that knowledge every day. He swallowed hard. I deserved punishment. I accepted my sentence. 2 years probation. 3 years parole. Mandatory AA meetings. Alcohol monitoring. I've done everything required. Haven't had a drink in 3 years. I go to meetings twice a week. David's eyes didn't flinch. I'm not fighting the rules, Your Honor. I know why they exist. I know I earned them. Judge Caprio studied the file. Your parole officer's report says you've been a model parolee. Every check-in on time. Every meeting attended. Every condition met, until this. Until this, David agreed. I knew crossing the state line violated parole. I knew it every time I visited my daughter. He paused, but Your Honor, she's my only family. My wife is gone. My son lives in California. My daughter is all I have. His voice softened again, and I couldn't miss watching her become a mother. I couldn't miss being there when she needed her dad. Judge Caprio's face was unreadable. So you've been violating parole regularly every time you visit. Imagine sitting in that courtroom watching a man admit to repeated violations, watching him possibly add years to his sentence with every sentence he spoke. Yes, sir, David said. About twice a month for the past year. His voice was steady, but the emotion underneath was undeniable. I knew the risk. I knew I could go back to prison. But my daughter needed me, and I needed her. He took a breath. After losing my wife, after nearly losing myself to grief and alcohol, my daughter was the only thing keeping me alive. The only reason to stay sober. The only reason to keep fighting, to keep being a person instead of just a pile of regret. The prosecutor's expression turned triumphant. Your Honor, the defendant has just admitted to over 20 violations. This is not a one-time emergency decision. This is a pattern of deliberate disregard for court orders. That's correct, David said. He didn't deny it. I've been visiting my daughter against parole terms for a year. Then his voice sharpened. But on June 23rd, I wasn't there to violate parole. I was there to be a father. He looked around the courtroom, and I happened to be leaving when Marcus needed help. When fate or God or random chance put me in that parking lot at exactly 3:17 p.m. when a child was dying. He stared directly at the prosecutor. You want to send me to prison for 5 years? Fine. I understand. I broke the rules multiple times. His voice grew stronger. But if you send me to prison, send me for all 23 times I visited my daughter. Not for the one time I saved a life. The silence that followed lasted 17 seconds. You could hear people breathing. Shifting. Trying to process what they had just heard, Judge Caprio slowly closed the file and looked at David. Mr. Romero, you had a distinguished career as a firefighter. Yes, Your Honor. 28 years. Providence Fire Department? Station 7, David said. Tell me about that career. David's shoulders straightened. Pride mixed with memory. I started when I was 24. Always wanted to be a firefighter. My father was a firefighter. His father before him. It's in my blood. His voice became stronger. First year was probationary. Learning, training, then real calls. Real fires. Real people needing help. Judge Caprio asked quietly, how many lives did you save? David answered without hesitation. Official count? 23, but that's just the ones documented. The ones where we pulled someone from a burning building or a wrecked car. The ones where we did CPR and they lived. He shook his head. The real number is higher. Every fire we fight, we're protecting everyone who might have been in that building's path. Every medical call, every rescue, they all matter. Judge Caprio typed something into his computer. According to your service record, you received 14 commendations. 3 medals of valor. 2 citations for bravery beyond the call of duty. He looked up. You were injured in the line of duty 7 times. Broken bones, burns, smoke inhalation. Yet you never took disability. Never quit. You served your full 28 years. That's correct, sir. Why did you retire? Judge Caprio asked. David's expression fell. My wife's cancer. His voice dropped. She needed me home. Needed someone who wasn't exhausted from 24-hour shifts. Someone who could take her to appointments, hold her hand through chemo, be there when she woke up screaming from pain. His voice cracked again. I chose her over the job. He swallowed, and I would choose her again every time. Your subscription literally determines whether these stories reach people who need hope. If Judge Caprio's courage moves you, hit subscribe and the notification bell right now. We're building an army for justice. Judge Caprio turned to the prosecutor. You mentioned Mr. Romero's DUI endangered lives. You're right, it did. He paused, but in his 28-year career, he saved 23 lives. Risked his own life 7 times. Spent 3 decades running into danger while everyone else ran away. He looked around the courtroom. Doesn't that context matter? With respect, Your Honor, the prosecutor replied, we cannot selectively apply the law based on someone's past heroism. If we excuse this violation, we set a precedent that parole terms are negotiable. Is justice negotiable? Judge Caprio's voice sharpened. Because from where I sit, sending a man to prison for saving a child's life seems like the opposite of justice. He stood up and walked down from the bench. This was only the second time that week he had stepped away from his elevated seat to stand face to face with someone before him. Mr. Romero, look at me. David met his eyes. You made a mistake 3 years ago. A serious mistake. Driving drunk is inexcusable. You could have killed someone. You know that. Judge Caprio's tone grew heavier. You accepted responsibility. You've done everything asked of you to make amends. You stayed sober. Attended meetings. Checked in religiously. You rebuilt your life. Then his voice intensified. But you also made another choice, multiple choices, to be a father to your daughter. To refuse to let parole terms destroy your last remaining family connection. To be there when she needed you. He paused, and on June 23 RD, to be a firefighter one more time, when a child's life hung in the balance. Judge Caprio turned and addressed the entire courtroom. The law says Mr. Romero violated parole. That is true. The law says violations carry penalties. That is also true. He raised his hand. The entire courtroom froze. People held their breath, waiting for the judge's next words. Your parole violation is dismissed, Judge Caprio announced firmly. Case closed. You will not spend a single day in prison for this. A wave of disbelief swept across the room, but then the judge lifted his hand. However, your original parole conditions are still active. You still have 18 months remaining, but I am making an adjustment to those terms. He leaned forward. You are now officially granted permission to travel to Hartford, Connecticut, to visit your daughter. Unlimited visits. No prior approval required. Just continue meeting all your other conditions. Stay sober. Attend your meetings. Check in monthly. Can you do that? David's voice cracked as emotion took over. Yes, Your Honor, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Judge Caprio shook his head. Don't thank me. Thank Marcus Williams. Thank his parents. Thank your 28 years of service. Thank every life you've saved. That's why you're walking out of here today. The judge sat back down at the bench. And Mr. Romero, when your grandchild is born, I want a picture. I want to see what this battle was truly for. What was worth risking prison over? David nodded without hesitation. You'll have it, Your Honor. The very first photo. Angela Williams rushed forward and threw her arms around David. Thank you for saving my baby. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being brave. Robert stepped beside them, his voice full of sincerity. You're family now. You saved Marcus. That makes you family forever. You hear me? If you ever need anything, you call us. You will never be alone again. Marcus ran up and wrapped his arms tightly around David's legs. Are you going to be okay, Mr. David? David knelt down, staring at the boy who had changed his entire future. I'm going to be all right, Marcus, thanks to you. You were incredibly brave in that fire. You stayed low, you stayed calm. You helped me save you. You're a hero too. The courtroom burst into applause. People stood up, clapping, cheering, wiping tears from their faces. The prosecutor silently grabbed his files and walked out quickly, without looking back. Judge Caprio watched it all with a quiet smile. 3 months later, David Romero stood in a hospital room in Hartford, Connecticut. His daughter Emma cradled a newborn baby girl in her arms, his granddaughter. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. Emma's face lit up as she whispered, Dad, meet Sophie Marie Romero. Her eyes sparkled with tears. We named her after Mom. We wanted her to carry her strength forward. David held his granddaughter for the very first time. Tears rolled down his worn face as he stared at her tiny hands. Hello, Sophie. I'm your grandpa. And one day I'm going to tell you all about your grandmother. How brave she was. How deeply she loved. How she saved me when I was lost. He looked at Emma, overwhelmed. Your mother would be so proud of you, proud of Sophie, proud that we're here together. Proud that we didn't let fear, grief, or rules tear us apart. Emma smiled softly. She would be proud of you too, Dad. For saving Marcus. For fighting to stay in my life. For staying sober. For being the father I needed, even when it was painful, even when it meant risking everything. That evening, David sent Judge Caprio a photo of Emma holding Sophie. David standing beside them, his arm around both of them. All three smiling. The caption read, This is what justice looks like. Thank you for making this moment possible. Judge Caprio framed the photo and placed it on his desk, beside the photo of James Sullivan and the letter from Thomas Harris. A reminder that real justice isn't only about rules. It's about people. It's about families. It's about choosing compassion over convenience. It's about seeing the person behind the violation, the story behind the statute, the heart behind the law. 6 months after the hearing, the Providence Fire Department held a special ceremony. 28 firefighters who had served alongside David showed up. They had heard about the case, the courtroom, and Judge Caprio's decision. They took a vote, unanimous. Chief Martinez stepped up to the podium. David Romero retired 2 years ago to care for his dying wife. He left with honor, with commendations, and with the respect of every single person in this department. He paused, but we never gave him the send-off he truly deserved. We never honored his service the way we should have. Today, we correct that. He called David forward and handed him a plaque. 28 years of service. 23 lives saved. 14 commendations. 3 medals of valor. And 1 more rescue after retirement. Chief Martinez lifted his voice, because once a firefighter, always a firefighter. He turned toward David. David, you represent everything this department stands for. Courage. Sacrifice. Putting others first, even when it costs you everything. The firefighter stood tall and saluted. David saluted back, tears in his eyes, finally receiving the closure his career deserved. For the first time, he wasn't being remembered for his mistake, he was being honored for his lifetime of service. Marcus Williams was there with his parents. He ran toward David with excitement. "Mr. David, I brought you something." He handed him a new drawing, this time with more detail and brighter colors. It showed David in firefighter gear carrying Marcus through flames, with bold words written at the bottom, "My hero. My friend. Thank you for being brave." You've just witnessed how one judge changed everything for one firefighter, but David Romero's case didn't just change his life, it changed Rhode Island's approach to parole violations. New guidelines were put in place. Emergency situations now require mandatory review before prison time is even considered, because context matters, reason matters, justice matters. Subscribe to spread this vision of justice, like this video if you felt something, comment your city below, let the world know we demand compassion in our courts, share this with someone who has lost faith in the system. This case became training material for judges across the country, an example of using discretion wisely, looking beyond the violation, and remembering that laws exist to serve people, not destroy them. David completed his parole 18 months later. No violations. Every condition met. At his final check-in, his parole officer shook his hand. "You're one of the good ones, David. Stay strong." David smiled. "I will. I've got too much to live for now. Sophie's first birthday is next month. Emma's starting nursing school. Marcus's family invited us to Thanksgiving. Life is good. I'm grateful." He walked out of that office a free man. No restrictions. No check-ins. No limits, just freedom to be a father, a grandfather, a friend, and a hero. But David still drove past Station 7 sometimes. He still felt that pull, still remembered the calls, the sirens, the fires, the rescues, the brotherhood, because once a firefighter, always a firefighter. It isn't just a job, it becomes who you are forever. And that's exactly why he ran into that burning building. That's why he risked 5 years in prison. That's why he didn't hesitate for even 1 second when he heard Marcus screaming, because firefighters don't calculate risk versus reward, they don't measure rules against lives, they simply act, they save, they protect. That's what heroes do. Judge Frank Caprio understood that. He looked past the parole violation and saw a lifetime of service. He looked past the technicality and saw the truth. He didn't see David Romero as a criminal who broke conditions, he saw him as a hero who saved a child and happened to break a rule while doing it. That's the kind of justice we need. That's the kind of judge every courtroom deserves. That's the kind of compassion that restores faith in the system. If you believe in this vision, we need you. Subscribe, share, comment, join the movement demanding that justice looks at the whole person, the whole story, the whole truth, because somewhere right now, another hero is facing punishment for doing the right thing, another person is trapped between rules and reality, another family is watching someone they love get crushed by a system that forgot how to care, and they need to know that judges like Caprio still exist, that justice still lives, that their story still matters, that someone will fight for them. David Romero's story mattered. It changed policies. It changed lives. It changed how people view parole, punishment, and redemption. And it all started with one moment, one judge willing to see past the law and choose justice, past the violation and recognize valor, past the rules and do the right thing. Welcome to the movement. Subscribe now. David's story is just the beginning.